You know how older consoles like the PS2 and the Game Boy have extremely expensive games? I'm talking games like Silent Hill 3 that go for $250, or Pokemon Emerald for $200 for the cartridge by itself. Unfortunately, the Nintendo Switch is getting kinda close with some of its games. I've collected a huge amount of useless information about the Switch library, and I've come to learn that I will not be able to afford some of these games. I've also learned that it's actually a good thing that I can't afford some of them because they are not worth the price these sellers are asking. We can start with an example of a game that you could consider worth its higher price. Persona 4 Golden, a classic in a huge franchise of RPG games. This game got a physical release only through limited run games in 2023, and now it's out of stock. If you didn't know, Limited Run is a company that works with other video game companies and indie developers to make physical versions of their games. But with a catch that they're only available to purchase for a couple months and then never again. Usually. So with this in mind, on top of being a very desirable game, especially for a console like the Switch, which attracts a lot of RPG enthusiasts and collectors, it makes sense why this game goes for around $80 today. And if you're a mega fan, I would understand why you would pay this amount for a lengthy and critically acclaimed game. It's an RPG, it's anime, it's on a portable Nintendo console, and it's good. It ticks every box for being an expensive game. But you know what game doesn't? This is another port of two classic RPGs. They're definitely more niche than Persona, but they're still considered essentials for RPG lovers. At least essential on the PS1. Because the Switch port is too goddamn expensive and pretty ugly. Grandia HD Collection also got a physical release by Limited Run, which means it's not available to purchase anymore. But that's not the problem. Because the only way you could get this game is by paying around $160 on the used market. And for that, you're getting a bare bones port of some decent games. A lot of the features you could find on emulators nowadays aren't present on this release. Features such as fast forward, save states, and other quality of life, which only makes this release another way to play this game. But at least you're still getting the vanilla release, right? No. This remastered applied an ugly filter on top of the character sprites, making them look smudgy. It's weird because we've seen a shift away from these type of filters or effects for pixel games. Look at games like Octopath Traveler and how they combine 2D and 3D elements similar to Grandia. It's a shame because the graphics of Grandia 1 are so charming, with its low poly 3D models and detailed sprite work. With how carefree this game is, changing the visuals so much lessens the impact of the game. Even the Grandia community agrees that this remastered is just a fine way to play it. Instead, recommending the definitive Japanese Dreamcast version to play, especially now with a great fan translation. It's sad, since this could have been a perfect game for the Switch, but it's botched by worse visuals, bare bones features, and a limited print release that makes this game $160 to get. It makes no sense for whom this release is. People who just want to play the game should just get the digital version for $20 when it goes on sale. And collectors should own the original release instead of this remastered one, which doesn't make any significant changes. Okay, that's enough of that one. What other game is too expensive? What the fuck am I supposed to say about this? Gunnar games have an interesting history in the video game collecting hobby. You can go as far back as the original NES, which got Bubble Bath Babes. An unlicensed Gunnar game, which is basically Bubble Bobble but with pixel 80s. This game goes for around $1,000 now for its material, and also it's pretty rare. But nowadays, that's pretty tame compared to the games you can get today. The eShop is full of those hentai games you've probably seen, but a pioneer for the Switch in 2017 was Senran Kagura Reflections, a game where you can do things with the girls in the game. I don't really want to talk about it. You can own a physical copy for $80 if you're a sick fuck. Why would you want this? I guess it is interesting since this game was the first of its kind to be on the Switch, although not the first on a Nintendo console. Surprisingly, Senran Kagura is a franchise that started on the 3DS in 2011 and then expanded to other consoles with spin-offs. So this Switch one isn't even that important in the history of Gunnar games. So someone explain why. Who am I to judge? I own Xenoblade 2. If you know a thing or two about game collecting, you know horror is king. Unfortunately, the horror selection on Switch is surprisingly weak in my opinion. You can find some decent horror games like Outlast or Amnesia, but nothing I would say is a must-own on Nintendo Switch. Until 2023. Every time we look back on the legacy of a console, they all have a category where they shine the brightest. The PS1 is now remembered by its huge RPG library and low poly graphics, the NES with platformers, and the Xbox's 360's most iconic games will be those brown shooters. If one thing will give the Switch an identity, that would be indie games. Celeste, Hades, Hollow Knight. In 2023, the Switch got its indie horror game to call its own. Signalis, a Resident Evil inspired isometric horror survival game. It got glowing reviews and now has a passionate cult following. The coolest part, it got a physical copy on Nintendo Switch, and now you can get it right now for $40, unless you really like Polaroids. The game collecting rabbit hole can be pretty deep and convoluted. You can go from collecting games you enjoy playing to obsessing over Y seals, first print bonuses, and pictures now I guess. And for the case of Signalis, the first print of the game came with a lenticular Polaroid picture of the main character, which is not included in later print runs of the game. So just because of this singular picture, Signalis can be 3 times the price of a regular version. Holy shit! I would understand if the first print had extra content or a different cover art, but no. Look at Signalis. She's the creative director of Polaroid. I love some of the Signalis games. What the fuck does she know about cameras? And it's not just that. This game seems at home on the Switch, but unfortunately, this version has worse performance compared to the PS4, and more importantly, reduced visual effects like removed ambient lighting, which is a pretty big deal for a horror survival game like this. At the end of the day, all of this doesn't matter that much because it's still a great game and you should play it either on the Switch, on PC, on PS4, regardless. Still play this game, it looks great. But please don't be dumb. Don't spend that much money on this game. Okay, so the last game they wanted me to talk about is Hello Kitty Cruisers. It's a port of the Wii U game, and it runs worse, and it's $80 now. What do I think?